Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the Cocteau Museum. This museum was opened in 2011 in the city of Menton on the French Riviera, and it was beautifully designed by architect Rudy Luccioli to house a collection of art related to Jean Cocteau. Jean Cocteau was a multi-talented French poet and artist. He was one of the foremost creatives of the Surrealist, avant-garde, and Dadaist movements, and was one of the most influential figures in early 20th century art. Cocteau was in contact with many artists of this period, and the museum collection reflects the diversity and richness of the artistic life of the first half of the 20th century. This collection gathers painting, engravings, drawings, and photographs of Cocteau and his entourage. This museum is located on the waterfront. During a dramatic storm in late October 2018, it was unfortunately hit by a huge wave, and the basement of the museum was flooded, and many artifacts were left in contact with salt water for a few days. Among the damaged objects was a series of photographs made by Lucien Clerc. Lucien Clerc, the great photographer who launched the Arles Photographic Festival and documented many events of the circles of the artists in the region. The irony is that one of Clerc's famous artistic works is named Né de la Vague, born from the wave. But the wave here brought more damages than birth. Also, yesterday, Luca showed us the flood of Sugimoto's Last Supper photo as an example of divine added value. But not sure that every museum or artist will appreciate such God contribution. Then, in this case, the conservator in charge of recovering these images noticed that some of the silver gelatin prints exhibited colloidal silver deposit in the image highlights. She suspected that extended contact with the seawater may have led to a silver image oxidoreduction in the low density era. We are already aware of one specificity of seawater after flooding. Following the large tsunamis in Asia in 2011, it was noticed that salt preserves wet materials from more growth for several weeks after the water has receded. Here, we have tried to highlight any specific degradation process due to salt in water. To perform our test, we selected several different types of photographs, traditional black and white photographs on baryta paper and resin-coated paper, color chromogenic prints, and negative films on cellulose triacetate base. Most of these samples were 40 years old. The images represent sensitometric strips of different density steps from white to black, and we measure the blue and visual densities of these samples before immersing them in jars filled with water. The first jar was filled with tap water from the city of Paris. The second jar was filled with mineral water, and the third jar was filled with distilled water. And the same set was repeated, but this time adding salt to the different types of water. To reproduce the salt composition of seawater, we introduced 27 grams per liter of sodium chloride and 4 grams per liter of magnesium chloride, which are the two most abundant salt in seawater. The jars were kept in the dark at room temperature during summer 2020, and the average temperature was 28 degrees Celsius, 82 Fahrenheit. After 2 days in unsalted tap water or mineral water, the image layer started to dissolve. The contents of the jars become cloudy, and this phenomenon becomes more pronounced afterward. And after a week, most of the image layer had gone and only a ghost image remained. In the other jars containing distilled water or various salt solution, the photographs look still in good condition. The photographs were then extracted and placed on blotting paper, image side up, and no fresh water rinsing was performed. Once dried, we looked at the images and could not detect any yellowing or staining. So we again measured the gray steps with the densitometer, and we came to the conclusion that a 7-day immersion in any type of water induced some fading. But the loss of density is higher in salt water than in distilled water. The negative film is less damaged by the flooding, but salt water induces more fading too. For the hectaprint color image, the presence of salt also induces a higher loss of density in the high density era of about 5%, which is mainly due to the fading of the yellow and magenta dye. Because none of the samples were rinsed after immersion, some have salt residue in the image layer and on the surface. It was perceptible under ranking light. So we wanted to evaluate the long-term effect of these residual salts on the image when stored in the dark at 50% relative humidity, and especially to assess if the residual salt could induce silver oxidation. Thus, the samples were placed in a climatic chamber for 5 days at 90 degrees Celsius and 50% relative humidity. The presence of residual salts does not induce more fading in a black and white picture, as we can see here for samples flooded in distilled water with or without salt. Thermal aging has a significant impact on the chromogenic print. The cyan dye has lost 50% of its density. However, the presence of residual salts does not seem neither to have a significant impact on dye degradation. Meanwhile, we notice a curious phenomenon. The black and white prints that had been immersed in salt water exhibited after thermal aging an overall strong yellowing of the gelatin layer. An increase of the blue optical density of 0.23 was measured. This did not happen on the color prints on negative black and white negative film. The origin of this phenomenon has not been elucidated, but we have put forward the hypothesis that iron is present in the tap water due to the iron water pipes. However, X-ray fluorescence analysis did not reveal any iron in the yellowed sample. In conclusion, these tests carried out on various types of 20th century photographs show that immersion in fresh water within a few days induces an hydrolysis of the gelatin due to the biological activity. When the water contains salt, the salt may induce some fading of the silver image, but the gelatin layer is better preserved. We did not observe formation of colloidal silver on the black and white prints. However, we noticed after thermal aging an overall yellowing of the gelatin layer of black and white prints immersed in salted tap water. Therefore, the colloidal silver deposit in the Clerc's photographs was probably not due to the seawater flooding. In fact, further examination of the damaged prints and contact with the Lucien Clerc studio revealed that this problem was already present before the flood. However, these experiments show that if a flood lasts, then it may be beneficial to add salt to the water to preserve the photographs. Thank you for your attention.